thing this week, by the way. So, okay.
All right, we're back for another riveting conversation. We'll hit the record button here, and thank you, Dr. Bob, for joining myself, Coach Josh, today. I finished your book, so I figured we can pick up where we left off last week and talk more.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, all right.
So the second half of the book is full of pages that are dog-eared, and I think there's so many places that we could start. There's one particular physics experiment that I knew about already, but I studied it in school, but to re-experience it had new meaning to me at this point in my life. And I won't get the name of it right, but I'm sure if I describe it to you, you can remember it. It's where, the light of photon of light was shining through a hole, and the way that it reflected in the back panel, it didn't make sense. So can you walk through that and just describe? Yes,
the double
right.
slit.
The double slit.
Einstein double split theory. Yes.
Yes, it's a very, very famous experiment. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it, but just walk through what it is first before we jump through to what it means.
Yeah. So what they did was they took a particle of light, all right, and they shot it at this light splitter, okay, so that the particle divided. And when the particle divided, they did some experiments. What they found was, even though the particle became two, that when they imparted different stimuli to one, the other one responded immediately. Okay, so there we go. Yeah. So so the result was that they felt that the question was, how is it that although you have two particles now, that they knew each other? How could they possibly be impacted by the same stimuli, even though they're, one is off space this way and the other one is off in space that way? There are various theories that emerge from that. Okay. And what myself and a couple of other physicists and Dr. Langham had concluded, our conclusion, utilizing the theory of potential, was that all of space is connected, and that there are parts of, and that the particles of space, which we call the potential molecules, okay, all have 13 qualities to them, and so that there's a potential differentiation for every molecule, right? At the same time, there is a connection with each molecule. For instance, if you take the mental principle, okay, every single particle in the universe and beyond, because of the nature of the potential molecule, has a connection. But if you take part of them that have mental, and then another part that have, let's just say, priorities, then they're different. They're the same molecules. They're still connected, but they're different. So that's the explanation that we were trying to project for that particular experiment, because we felt that science is what science is doing is that they've gone right past, they've flown right past the explanation of the universe. You know, they're off on this tangent when the tangent is right there, and they don't see it. Now, here's the neat part. That applies to our mental state as well. All of these different theories that you see today, you know, critical theory, woke theory, you know, conservative theory, whatnot, are misnomers of the potential principles. People are looking at these principles in the wrong way. They're not looking at them as guidelines. They're using them to explain their posture, so that instead of looking at, for instance, priorities. Now, here's an interesting point that we can discuss. If people who are, for instance, proponents of let's say, critical race theory, and those that are anti-critical, were to come together and look for priorities that they're concerned with, they're going to come to a totally different approach to society and philosophy than where they're at now. Instead of there being a polarity and, you know, antithesis, what they're doing is they're generating a greater polarity and antithesis. But by going, but by seeking and pursuing one of the 13 principles of both sides, they're already coming together. They're already establishing a basis for a common understanding. So that's where that particular concept comes into play with the Holy Grail and with the human mind and human realities, insofar as understanding the world that we're involved in. You know, it's an approach that categorizes where we're at. You know, more specifically and more basically, because we are now going to get to why you think critical theory is important to you and why I think it's not important to me. Not that it exists. That's not the point, because it does exist. The point is, what is the priority? What is the process? What does the model hold that's significant to a culture? Okay, so approaching things from that framework, it gives us a much deeper understanding of not only our own thinking, but of our direction in life, and pursuing a clearer course to our daily actions. Is that good for you? Does that work?
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
Okay.
So, as a believer of critical theory, what you're saying is people are using principles to support a priority that is in their life. So it's not necessarily to use the Holy Grail molecule to understand something in its wholeness, but they're taking a piece of it or a portion to fit it into what they've already declared as what's important to them.
Okay, so remember this now. With potential theory, you have two basic aspects. You have the principles, the basic principles, which are infinite, and they are um, um, objective. Okay. Then you have the application of the principles, which you can identify as an advocacy. So what happens is the moment that you engage any kind of advocacy, and it could be positive or negative, what happens is you immediately connect with the opposite, because polarity is one of the keys to the universe. Each one of those principles has a polarity to it. It's binary.
All right, so say that again, maybe if you could, with the, like, as soon as you engage with the application or the advocacy of something, so what'd you say? You're engaging with the polarity or the opposite of it?
Yes. Yep. You're
All
you're
right.
activating.
So
You're
take any
activating.
one of those theories. So critical theory, conservative theory. As soon as you activate it, then you're activating its opposite as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
How does
Yep.
that work? How does that work?
Polarity. How does polarity work? How does magnetism? Magnetism works by polarity. How does the universe work? By polarity. How does the Einstein-Paulin double split work? By polarity. The
Okay,
connection.
so
Go ahead.
okay, so thank you for bringing that full circle. So how does that slit theory, how does polarity show up there? What exactly is that?
Well, you're splitting the particle into two, and the spin rate, the spins are opposite of each other. They
So
become two. When a proton from the sun travels from the sun to the earth, it does so in a spiral form, okay, until it hits the earth. Then when it hits the earth, it reverses.
it reverses.
Yes. So, well, sure, you got the north and the south, right? It comes down, for instance, as an example, hits the North Pole, spirals to the equator, and then as it starts to cross the equator and reach for the South Pole, it changes its direction and spirals to the South Pole in the opposite way.
And so that type of what would you call it, a particle, it can go through solid objects, is that right?
Oh, yes. Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they haven't even discovered the potential molecule yet because it's so damn little itty bitty thing that trillions and quadrillions of them, filling space.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, but that polarity is very important.
Yeah.
I mean, when you need to bring polarity into your thinking, because it's a balance, and it gives you a perspective of whether or not you're on the right path,
Yeah.
and it leads to here's something I talk about in the book. It leads to a state of complementarianism. All right, and I talk about that a bit in the book, and actually in all my books. And complementarianism is the state of, it's a third state, which is the integration of two opposites into a third greater circumstance.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Okay.
you and I disagree on something. We find a way to agree on something that incorporates your basis and my basis. We've just established a new principle for that issue at a higher level.
Hmm.
And that's the way we want to think. That's the objective of good thinking. Because
Right.
that's what wise men do. You know, they say things, or they ask things, or they ask questions, or they make comments about, well, what is it, my son, that you are thinking about? What is it that you really want? Oh, you say money, but what is money going to bring you that you think is going to be so effective? It's going to be so wonderful. It's going to be your holy grail. And you find out, you think about it. I did this with a fellow who I hired one time to do real estate sales. And after I got finished with him, I mean, his whole question was, bless you.
Thank you.
So the whole question was, what do you want? And I want a lot of money. Okay. Well, is there anything else? No. Just want a lot of money. Well, why? And so the bottom line ends up, because it brings him security. Security. Yeah. So what I had to do with him is generate security without the money.
Hmm.
Made him feel a lot better. And by the way, he became very successful. And his son was even more successful than he was, utilizing that same principle.
Hmm.
And it does people well to know that and understand that. That's complementarianism.
Uh-huh.
So now I don't believe that money is the answer. He believes that money is the answer, but we come to this third posture that says, well, there's something that money gives you. Is there another way of gaining that without money?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, money, sure. Money can do that, but is there something else that can do that?
That makes it easier to understand. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's good. Because I was going to ask, would it be fair to say that any application, so you mentioned principles are objective. So is that fair to say that the application will always be subjective? It's always related to priority then? Unless you have the complementarianism view.
Yes. Balance, unless it's balanced.
Okay, so you can balance it by having a conversation with somebody else and sharing or engaging in the polarity, right? That's what that
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't like guns. I like guns. All right, we're going to go out to my cabin in the woods, and I'm going to bring my gun along. Now, you don't like that. But the reason you don't like it is because you're fearful that you might get shot accidentally. Like just say, my reason for carrying the gun is because there are bear and snakes in the woods. And we may have an encounter that we may need a weapon. So now you feel a little better because you understand why I'm taking the position I am. Just, a wild example as to
Yeah. Safety.
how it works. But
Yeah, well,
whenever, try this, whenever there is an advocacy, I don't care whether it's positive or negative, look for the opposite. And then try and figure out what's at the, it's very difficult to do if you don't have one or two of the parties there, but then try and figure out what's the basis for why they're thinking that.
Uh-huh.
Or what kind of complementarianism would work for the both of them.
Mhm.
Then you're on the right track. Then you're dealing with a deeper, balanced, natural position of thought.
Natural thinking, Nady, right? That came through in the book a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk more about that. I thought that was really interesting in the book, this reference to NATI, natural thinking. And we should maybe define that first, because natural could just mean to people like the way that I think, but that means something more different to you. Yes. So how would you define natural thinking?
Well, NA is natural. T is thinking. I is intelligence. Okay. And the intelligence is the 13 principles. The natural 13. When I say natural, I'm talking about a biological, genetic, the 13 infallible principles. The thinking is the advocacy, our approach to utilizing our, the belief systems that we use with incorporating those principles. So that's NATI, natural thinking and intelligence.
Gotcha. All right. So natural is biological. You said the thinking is the advocacy or the approach, the belief system, and then the intelligence is the 13 principles.
Right.
So it's just the way we interact and use this thinking to achieve potential. Yes, to grow in our understanding of things.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
Always think, if you always look at things through the 13 principles and polarity,
Yeah.
you're going to understand things a lot deeper, a lot broader, and a lot more effective and efficiently. You're going to see them in different light.
Yeah. So let's go through this. It'd be a good test for me to see if I can list the 13 principles. Does that sound good?
Okay. What? Say again.
Let's go through and see if I can list the 13 principles. This would be a good test for me.
You want the 13 principles. Okay.
Well, I want to see if I can come up with them.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
Fire away.
So, yeah. So the pattern is 3, 6, 4, right? So it's the association with pulse, wave, and spiral. But also, like the pulse can also be translated as. So there's 3 of them. So I know what the 3 are, but so it's awareness, beliefs, and communication. Yes. And
Yep.
so, and then there's organizing principles, and there's 6 of them. And that would be, I'm gonna need some help here. Some the beliefs, priority, feedback. Might need some help here.
Models.
Models.
Do it this way.
Art.
Law and order are 2. Right.
Okay, law and order.
Parts and whole are 2. So it
Parts
makes
and whole.
4. Right.
Yeah.
Then you have measurement and feedback.
Measurement and feedback. Okay.
Priorities
Yeah.
or measurement.
Okay, interesting. Okay, priorities and measurement. That's one and the same.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then so the 4 spirals would be mental, physical, spiritual, and
Physical, mental, emotional,
emotional, and spiritual.
and spiritual. Yes.
Gotcha. So from what we were stating earlier, the application are those middle 6, the organizing principles. Is that right? Like the application part of it.
Yeah.
it's interesting that feedback is one of them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe let's talk more about that, because I think you mentioned before, like feedback is the weakest one for most people. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the corrective factor, right? It's the gyroscope of thinking. And if you know how a gyroscope works, you're going on a path, and then when you get off the path, the gyroscope kicks in and puts you back on the correct path, right? And it so happens that there's two gyroscopes. So when you're going positive, you hit one gyroscope, you're going too far. And when you're going negative, you hit the other gyroscope, and that brings you back.
Mm.
Okay.
All
And
right. So
it keeps you honest.
yeah. And so polarity shows up with the pulse, right? So I think
No,
you described.
no. Well, it can. Polarity is with all of them. Each one of them has a polar
Got it.
binary aspect to them.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So I'm just thinking of the way that it was described in the book about the planes, right? So awareness shows up on like the x axis, like left and right, or I'm sorry, east and west. And then beliefs would be like north and south, and then communication would be back and forth. So we're looking at a three-dimensional plane system where there's polarity with each one of those things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. The front could be positive, the back could be negative, the left could be positive, the other one could be negative and whatnot. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so why this all ties into geometry is because when we have a shape, we talk about 13, right? So let me make sure I have this right. So one deals with the edges. So we're talking like a cube or almost like yeah. So walk me
Cube.
through that.
A cube. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a cube and there's 8 edges,
Yes.
and that would imply that there's also 8 corners. Do I have that right?
Well, there are 8 corners. There are 6 faces
6
of a
faces.
cube, right? And then there are 12 edges.
Got it. 12 edges. Right.
Right. So the 12 edges represent the 6 organizational in polarity.
And they're opposites. Okay. Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And how many faces?
6.
And so those represents the
Creative. Well, awareness. Well, no, creative. The creative, the positive, negative, creative. The uh, the 3 creative, positive and negative, positive, negative, positive, negative.
Gotcha. So it's
Okay.
creative. Okay, yeah, creative organizational principles, which there are 6, and then the application.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, that helps me fill in some gaps here. I got it now. So creative, organizational, and then application. So we haven't gotten into a lot of the application part of it yet, with like spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. And maybe tell me more about that. Those are just lenses through which we interpret things, or how we can understand the world. Like how can we be more well-rounded with those applications?
How you function. Matter of fact, there's a very famous assessment, Myers-Briggs,
Yes.
that determines your functional abilities, how you function physically, mentally, emotionally, and they use intuitive. They don't use spiritual, which is a shame.
Same thing. Is it synonymous, or is it something different?
What?
Like, they just call it something different, but it also means spiritual, or
No, intuition. Intuition is a part of spiritual.
okay, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Technically, the more spiritual you are, the more intuitive you can be.
Right. Okay. So taking that assessment gives you an understanding of how immersed you are in each of those four things. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. At a particular,
Point
you know,
in time.
the problem that they have, as far as I'm concerned, is that it's a snap. They do it as a snapshot in time. Our assessments are a snapshot in time, but with the ability to measure anytime. Most of these other scientific, pseudo-scientific assessments can't do that. They can only do it at a particular moment in time. Our assessments can do it throughout time.
What do you mean by that?
You could determine an overall um, application or direction or pattern, but you could also determine at a specific one. So here's the way to measure it. By virtue of our assessment process, you can determine a general application, a specific application, or an incidental application.
Okay.
These others can't do that.
What's an example of an incidental application?
Something that occurs as a like collateral damage, so to
Okay.
speak.
Yeah. It occurs because something else has occurred.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. And so you can measure general, specific, and incidental applications.
yeah.
But I'm curious, like what I don't understand is about the time. So isn't it still, whenever you take it, it's still a moment in time? But you're saying it transcends time? Is that what you're
You
saying?
can measure, but you can measure. It's at a particular moment in time, but you can measure it in the sense of if it's ongoing or not. That's what I mean by that. Is it part of a continuum, or is it something that's just happening at that particular time?
Okay. So do you have an example of something that would help me understand that?
Uh, well, how about I guess how about a soldier who is at war, and you know he's not a killer, but he kills
Oh,
at
okay.
a particular point in time. He will kill policemen, right? Um, a fireman, let's say, who has a daily routine. So six and a half days a week, he acts like this. But the half a day that he's called on to answer a fire, he's going to act differently.
Okay.
Okay.
So the assessment would give insight into maybe not something that's happening at that time, but something that does happen or could happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For instance, if you are this new program that we have coming out this year uh, will tell you what kind of condition your various body organs are in. So let's say you want to measure your heart. Okay, so you start today, you measure your heart, you do a printout, you know, you save it to a file, all right? And you do that every day. Well, by the end of the year, you're going to be able to say, well, on June 21st, right, my heart was acting up
Yeah.
to, 100 beats a minute. But throughout the year, my heart rate was 60 beats a minute. Okay, so now both of those factors have a meaning, a deep meaning. You show those to your cardiologist, and he's going to say, "Well, okay, look, you seem to be okay, but why did this occur? Is this an incidental event, or is this something that's very specific to what's going on?" And then they can make a determination. Okay, and you could do the same thing with your thinking about whatever it is, a client or an experiment or a relationship,
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good, I just thought of something, suppose you're going out with a woman or a guy, and you do a daily measurement. And after like 6 months, you got a whole slew of charts, right? And, she says something to you and you say, "Well, wait a minute now. Let me look. Last month on August 4th, you were in this state of patterning, I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there's information stored away in there, right? That we might be blind to, but is going on, and that happens every day with all of our organs. That's the purpose of them, the purpose of the organs, like how well they operate, and how well they interact with the way that we treat our body, or what we put into it, or what we put it through. That basically tells the tale of how efficiently they're operating and serving out their natural purpose of why they're there.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
you recognize your regular levels by having consistent data over a period of time, and then can recognize any influxes or irregular occurrences throughout that time period, and then you can pinpoint maybe why those happened.
Yep.
And then that's information that can be key to either avoid something like that, or to understand why that happened. Now we're getting into like, our achieving potential, right? Understanding how these all interact with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. On a very profound, thorough level.
Right, and again, work both ways, right? So it works by identifying the outlier in a negative way, but maybe there is an outlier with it working like more efficiently or better than its regular usage.
Yep.
And then maybe to replicate that. So maybe we can start to wrap up with this here, because this connected things with like frequencies and wavelengths.
Yes.
Right, so we can get to a state, and I started reading the next book that you recommended, Les Femi, about focus.
Yes, open focus, yeah.
Open focus, yeah, and it talks about becoming aware of whatever we're interacting with, but putting it in the place of all of its surroundings as well. And what happens is we start to become more at peace with something, even in stressful moments. And it's because we're associating the space around it with that thing, and therefore it doesn't like rule over us. We're not submitting to its negative effects, and so we're transcending, we're overcoming something that we can spiral into in a negative way, but it's like a defense mechanism against it. Am I explaining that right? And do I have an understanding of that?
You can explain it. You can explain it like that. Another way of looking at it is the free will predetermination prospect. Or am I violating the predetermination? Am I utilizing my free will to the detriment, okay, which most people do, especially when they say, well, I'm free to think whatever I want. I'm free to say whatever I want. Well, that's not quite true,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing there is what causes advocacy. It causes advocacy because you're not centered,
Hmm.
you're not balanced, you know. And people say, well, you know, you're talking about a world, an unrealistic world. You know, there's no such thing as living a life of balance. Well, yes, if you define it as being attempting to live a balanced life, not actually being a balanced life. I mean, uh, the best example I can give is nature itself, right? You live in a nice little house off the coast of Maine, right? June 21st, beautiful sunshine day, 80 degrees, calm seas. December 21st, snowing like hell. The seas are lapping over your house. That's nature. That's nature.
Yeah.
One day it's great, the next day it's tough, right? But as a continuum, it's balance.
Hmm.
You're living a life of balance.
And it's like the Tao, right, of Eastern
Yes.
philosophy and prospect. Yeah, like the
Yeah. Yeah.
yin and yang, yin and yang.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah. Maybe we can put a bookmark in it here because I'd love to talk more about that. I read the Tao Te Ching years ago before any of my spiritual prowess or understanding of some of these concepts, and it was so enlightening to think of the world that way. That was the first time I had ever been exposed to, the polarities. That's what that is, right? It's polarities, is yin and
Yep.
yang, Tao.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Sure. Yeah.
And we always seek the balance. So maybe we're never in balance, but when we're out of balance, we always pursue the opposite of what we don't have,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's just a constant game. To your point, nature is, on a whole, it's balanced, but in any given moment, it's unbalanced.
Yeah. Yeah.
System
And
parts, right? That's that
right.
conversation.
Yes. And then it becomes your perspective.
Right.
Do you consider living on the coast of Maine in June and in December balance, or do you consider it a pain in the ass to be in Maine,
Yeah.
coast of Maine in December,
Right.
right? Yeah, but that's part of your life in Maine on the
Right.
coast, right?
Yeah. How about that, right? So somebody could actually more enjoy December 21st and the snowfall, right, than sunshine on June 21st.
Yeah,
You're right.
I love the snow.
You're right.
I love rough seas,
Yeah.
you know, as long as I'm not in.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why, why not? You know, so it's the principle of your mindset. You know how you're approaching. Watch your polarity, and then look for your potential. In there, and just simply looking for when it comes to other people, looking for the complementary uh, aspects
Right.
because that pulls you through. That makes you a wise man.
I mean, immediate thing that comes to mind is, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, right? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Like, what? That's it might be shocking to hear that from the regular person, but he recognized that principle.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Stuff like that is great. It really is. It's a guidepost. I consider.
Yeah.
I like his other one about um, knowing people. People know, some of the time they can fool you. Some of the time, some people that you can fool all of the time, but you can't fool all the people all of the time.
Yeah.
I, I like I like that one. It's like you go to a cocktail party and you meet the guy and he's, I did this and I did that and I've got this and I've got that, and there's 10 people around, and after he leaves, 8 people say, you know, wow, boy, isn't he terrific? And one other guy looks at you and say, he's full of shit. You know, well, you can't fool all the people all the time.
Yeah.
So, that's yeah, stuff like that is great. Yeah, you
Yeah.
read, that's what we're missing today in education, especially in Western education, is the masters. The wisdom of the masters. Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. All of them. They all have great concepts. Some of them are not total, but what they have in many respects is wonderful. They just,
Mm.
they just open your mind and your heart and your spirit to wonderful states of consciousness. And that's where you want to be. That's 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 where we have to get through to Mr. Putin and people like him.
Hmm.
Is those types of beingness uh, important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm in a wonderful state of consciousness right now. So we'll put a bookmark in it. Always a pleasure, Dr. Bob. We will talk again next week.
My pleasure. See you then. Have a great week.
Thank you. You too.